I'm Bill Stoller, proprietor of Stoller Family Estate. Well, it originally was founded in 1993 by the purchase of the land, but our first planting was in 95, and from there we've planted nearly every year to present day. The property was bought by my father and uncle in 1943, and they needed to get away from their family farm, and so they became partners and bought this farm, and they bought it strictly with the idea of raising turkeys. Our family actually lived on the flatland along the Yamhill River, but where our house is today was the site of another house, and was actually part of another, I'm not going to say land claim, but another piece of property that somebody else owned. And so when they first bought this property, they had the single house that we call the estate house now, where my aunt and uncle were living. And then when my father got married to our mother, then they built their home in 1946. And so that's what we call the cottage today. So that's where our family then ended up moving to. But in 1951, they finished another house on the other farm. And so that's where really our family grew up in that home. It really goes back to our grandmother, and the family was in church one day, and the pastor was rotating and leaving their church. He had 2 turkeys, and so he asked the congregation, which I'm sure wasn't very big, that I have 2 turkeys and who would like to have them? And grandmother raised her hand and said, I'll take them. And I don't know how the story goes, whether they were 2 hens or 2 toms. I'm going to guess they were 2 hens. So they bought a tom turkey so they would mate. And so they had eggs, and they somehow incubated them. And so that was really the beginning of at least the Stoller family being in the turkey business. You're not able to take as much income in as the expenses grew. And so the bank basically said, okay, you gotta cease raising turkeys. And so the farm came up for sale. And I was actually in Europe at the time on a holiday and came back to find out that the farm was up for sale. And there were 2 people who were looking at purchasing the land. I then interceded and made a proposal to buy the whole farm. And, the motivation to buy it was to keep the land in the family. And my uncle was still alive and still living in the estate house. And my cousin was still over on the west side. So ended up buying the whole thing, because that's part of the legacy of wanting to have this land stay in the family. And then today, obviously, it's all vineyard land, and it's just a totally different feel. And you probably get, at least I do, I get a little more of a rush when I look at that and just the beauty of it, as you would the Grand Canyon, as you would the Columbia Gorge, that kind of a feeling here, same feeling. Very proud of what this has turned out to be. And it's what I envisioned from the very